Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the first video of 2022. As I think I said in my last video, 2021 flew by, which is absolutely terrifying because where did it go? Where did the time go? I don't know. But yeah, so today I am going to just be going through my realistic reading list for 2022. And what I mean by realistic reading list is obviously if you look at me, follow me on the story graph, my actual TBR list is significantly longer than this, but these are the books that I want to prioritize and definitely will have finished probably by the end of the year. So I'm gonna go through a few different ones. There's some kind of rereads on here as well. But yeah, I will get started. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna start off with the more kind of contemporary books and just see where the video takes me from there. So the first book that I really want to read this year is If the Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamori. So this was actually recommended to me by a friend, and that same friend actually bought me this for Christmas. That was a really nice surprise. I was not expecting it. Thank you for this. I've been wanting to read it for ages, and now I finally can. So, I don't know much about this book. From what I kind of do know, it's about a man who is dying, and I think he gets a deal made to him by the devil, or something like that. And from what I know, I don't know much, but from what I know, my friend told me it's quite a wholesome read. She said it's a subject matter that would normally be quite sad and quite depressing, but she said the way it's handled, it's quite a kind of a peaceful, comforting read. She kind of described it as a bit of a warm blanket. So I have a really stressful essay that I'm doing at the moment, so I think this will definitely be one that's going to help me get through that. So the next book on my list is by an author that I've already read for some of their works, and I really enjoyed it, so I'm very excited for this one, and that is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. So I read Red, White and Royal Blue. I have to be really careful saying that title because it normally ends up turning into a bit of a tongue twister. There are, too many, too many letters. But yeah, One Last Stop. So I really liked Red, White and Royal Blue. There were, a couple of things that I think in the subject matter didn't quite get handled as well as I would like them to have been. But from what I've heard about One Last Stop, I have very, very high hopes for this. It's about a girl who moves to New York, and on the train she meets another girl who has basically kind of been stuck on that train since, I think, 1970. So she's kind of, I assume, frozen in time, and I'm assuming it's going to be a nice little kind of, maybe a romance, and, about how these two kind of characters meet and interact. And I'm very excited. I really like her writing style. So this is one that I am very, 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 very excited to read. And I've said that so many times. So yeah, I'm gonna stop saying I'm excited to read this because I think you get the point. So the next book on this list is kind of a reread. And when I say kind of a reread, I mean I've read the first one, but I've not read the second one. So I want to reread them. Reread the first one before I go on and read the sequel, and that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. So I read this back when I was in high school, and it was one of my favourite books back then. Depressingly don't remember it very well. I'm quite ashamed because I still kind of consider it as one of my favourites, but I can't remember it at all. It's basically about these two boys. I think they're teenagers, I could be wrong, like late teenagers. And it's kind of how they meet and how their friendship / relationship kind of develops. It's got some really nice representation in this. And again, I just remembered this being a really wholesome read. I think I read it in a day the first time I read it. I just absolutely fell in love with it. So I'm very excited to see if rereading it lives up to how I remember it in my head. And following on from that is the sequel, which I haven't read yet, and that is Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. Oh yeah, and the author is, I don't actually know how to say his name, so I'm not gonna butcher it. I'll let you read it for yourself, and I will not go through my habit of horrifically butchering people's names. It's because people used to butcher my name when I was young, so when I was young, I mean they still butcher my name, Catriona. But yeah, so now I just have a vendetta, so I just go and say people's names wrong. Not intentionally, I don't actually do it intentionally. But yeah, I don't actually know anything about the sequel. I'm kind of just trying to ignore it. I haven't even read the blurb on the back. I just want to kind of go into it blind and see where it takes me. But I really hope it lives up to the first book, or at least as I remember of the first book. But yeah, very excited to read both of these. Okay, so the next book on this list is a book that anyone who has been following my channel will know that I have fallen in love with this series. And I fell in love with this series probably about 10 years too late, because as I say, I missed the hype train for it, and that is the last book in the Hunger Games trilogy, Mockingjay. So yeah, I don't think much needs to be said about the Hunger Games. I feel like everyone kind of knows what the Hunger Games is, but for anyone who doesn't know, basically in the first book, there is a death game, and a male and female from each kind of the 12 districts of this kind of like country, nation, it's a dystopian setting, are put into this death game, and basically you'll have to fight to the death and kill each other for the entertainment of the capital. And yeah, I won't go into any more than that because again, last book of the trilogy, let's not get into spoiler territories, but yeah, I'm very excited to see how this concludes. I have a horrible feeling it's not going to live up to the first two, just from, again, what my trusty reading sources have said to me. But it doesn't need to necessarily live up to it, it just needs to do them justice. And then I will be a happy cat, and I will be content with one of my, hopefully, favourite book series. But we'll see. We'll see where the last book takes us. So the next book on this list is another reread, and this is another book that in my younger days I considered one of my favourites, but again, it was so long ago that I read it, I want to reread it and kind of rejudge it before I can really talk about it on the channel or put it into any kind of like top favourite books, because my taste as a teenager was questionable. So yeah, let's just go through and actually check if I am actually still like as much as I did back then, and that is the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So yeah, from what I remember, this is a retelling of the Iliad, and I just remember the language and the prose was so beautiful. So if you're into kind of Greek mythology and you like kind of like a really beautiful prose, then it's definitely for you. Again, I don't actually remember, I mean obviously I remember the kind of the basics from the Iliad, but I don't remember anything kind of overtly about it, so I'm really excited to reread that and again see if it lives up to the memory that I have of it in my head. So the next book is a series, and this is also a reread, and again, anyone on my channel will know that I've read the first two of these last year, and that is the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. So as a child, teenager really, again, this is a series I kind of found a bit later than probably most of its target audience, but I loved this. I myself am dyslexic and ADHD, so Percy for me was kind of a very relatable character, and Rick, he's just so witty. There's something in his humour that I think, even though these are children's books, I can still enjoy them because it reminds me of the way I thought when I was a child, and I think that is such a difficult skill to have as a writer, because I think as you get older it's so easy to kind of lose touch with some of those kind of finer nuances that kind of children have. But yeah, the next book that I have to read in the series, or reread in the series, is The Titan's Curse. This, I remember, was one of my favourites. I think my favourite was definitely the last one, but The Titan's Curse, I think is when Nico gets introduced, and I do love Nico. Precious child must be protected. But yeah, very excited for this. Who knows when I'll get around to reading it, but again, it's a series I quite like to read when I'm kind of stressed, so being a university student, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to read stress-free books. Well, it's not a stress-free book, but in fact, this is when the series starts getting stressful, so maybe reading this as a stress relief isn't actually a good idea, but I'm full of bad ideas, so why not add one more? So that's it for the kind of more contemporary books. I do have a couple of classics also on my reading list. I don't tend to read as many classics when I'm at uni because there's those I have to read, and they're not the easiest, and I kind of find if I bog myself too much down, that was a really well constructed sentence, if I kind of get too bogged down in reading the classics, that's when I end up in a reading slump, and I really don't want that because reading slumps aren't fun. So the first book on my kind of classic reading list is Persuasion by Jane Austen. I have been wanting to read this for absolutely ages, and it's only short, and I'm kind of probably planning to read it over summer. It's probably easier if I just read out the little blurb on the back because I don't really know much about what Persuasion's about, but I know loads of people say it is their favourite kind of Austen novel. And aside from Pride and Prejudice, Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice seem to be the kind of the main two that people tend to really love. That's the point. But yeah, no, let me know what your favourite Jane Austen novel is. I'll be very curious to hear, but I know lots of people really love this. So, 8 years ago, Anne Elliot bowed to pressure from her family and made the decision not to marry the man she loved, Captain Wentworth. Now circumstances have conspired to bring him back to her social circle, and Anne finds old feelings for him reignited. However, when they meet again, Wentworth behaves as if they are strangers, and he seems more interested in her friend Louisa. With humour, insight and tenderness, Jane Austen tells the story of a love that endures the tests of time and society. So, as always in Jane Austen, I'm expecting a good romance. Admittedly, some of her romance are better than others. Fanny Price, Mansfield Park. But yeah, the romance was not the highlight of Mansfield Park. There were other aspects I loved about that book. The romance was not one of them. But yeah, Persuasion, I'm expecting her usual kind of wit and humour and her kind of little, like, sometimes digs, but they're usually kind of, like, subtle, I suppose, but maybe not subtle. Probably not said that very well. But yeah, no, she kind of, like, gives nice little kind of, like, micro insights into society. And specifically kind of into, like, the family home. And I'm very excited to see how she does that in Persuasion. It's also nice if you're kind of looking for a classic to read, it's not too long. So, you know, if you want a classic to read that isn't too much of a time commitment, this could definitely be one to check out. And if you have read it, let me know your thoughts on it because I am very excited to read this. And the final book on my reading list for this year is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. So, story behind this one actually, it's got a little bit of a special place in my heart. So on my mum's birthday last year, we actually went to Haworth to the Bronte parsonage to kind of see the place where the Bronte sisters all grew up. And neither mum or myself had read any of Anne Bronte's work. I feel like she's definitely the lesser known Bronte. Everyone tends to kind of think more of either like Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, and Anne Bronte tends to get kind of overlooked a bit. So before we went, we watched kind of an older TV adaptation of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. And obviously TV adaptations aren't the best way to get a sense of the author, but I just remember being really blown away by the themes it had in it. Like, for the period it was written, it was so, like, the themes that came across was so forward-thinking. And when I actually went to the Bronte parsonage, I bought a little book as a memento. And this was the book that I bought because after kind of watching the TV adaptation, I really wanted to read it and see how Anne Bronte herself actually kind of depicts these themes in her writing, and to see how she just portrays them all, because, as I say, it was just so forward-thinking and I was so blown away by it. I genuinely, like, I was so surprised. So basically what this is about is there's kind of a woman who, she moves with her son to, like, Wildfell Hall as a tenant, and everyone's kind of like, she's a bit weird, I think she's a painter. And obviously a woman in those days, painting for a living, no husband with a child, oh no. And you kind of see, you kind of see her story unfold. I won't go too much into details, but yeah, you kind of see her past unfold, her demons, I suppose, not like real demons, but, you know, like metaphorical demons. But I'm very excited to read that because I think Anne Bronte does definitely go underappreciated among her sisters, and yeah, it'd be nice to kind of give her some recognition and be able to recommend, like, solidly recommend it to you guys as a classic to check out. So that is everything from me for today. Please let me know your kind of reading lists for 2022. Again, give me the abridged version, give me the full 100 list. I think this year I'm kind of aiming to try and go for 50 books, but with me, who knows? I tend to kind of have good months and bad months for my reading, but I think realistically doesn't everyone, unless you are a superhero for reading. And if you can read 100 books in a year, I really respect you, because I can sometimes, but sometimes isn't consistent. So I'm gonna set my goals as realistic and probably still not meet them. But yeah, let me know what you want to read. Also, if you've read any of these books that are on my list, please let me know your thoughts on them. Spoiler free, yeah, spoiler free, or if you're gonna spoiler, just mark very clearly a little spoiler tag so you don't spoil them for the people, because if you do, I will be angry. But yeah, Happy New Year, enjoy the start of 2022, and I hope that it is a good one for all of you. Stay safe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.